I heard a thump in the night, and now I'm afraid to sleep. The old Victorian was a steal, that's what the realtor, Mrs. Davison, kept repeating, her smile a little too wide, a little too practiced. A real steal, Liam, just needs a little love. Love was realtor code for rotting floorboards and a pervasive smell of damp earth. But after the city had chewed me up and spat me out, a little love sounded a lot like a whole lot of peace and quiet. So I signed the papers, ignoring the nagging feeling that I was missing something. That Mrs. Davison was breathing a sigh of relief a little too loud. The town of Havenwood was postcard-perfect New England quaint general store, a church with a steeple that seemed to pierce the perpetually gray sky, and people who stared just a little too long when I walked by. I was an outsider, that much was clear, but I was used to it. Solitude suited me, and the house, despite its flaws, was undeniably beautiful in a decaying, Gothic sort of way. 3 stories, a wraparound porch with peeling paint and stained glass windows that cast eerie shadows on the walls, perfect for a writer who needed to disappear. The first thump came 2 weeks later. I was sitting at my desk, wrestling with a particularly stubborn paragraph, when it echoed through the house a dull, heavy thud, like something large falling on the floor above. I jumped, my heart hammering against my ribs. Probably just the house settling, I muttered. But the sound had been unnatural, more solid than creaking wood, more deliberate. I crept upstairs, my hand gripping a heavy iron candlestick I'd found in the attic, another charming feature. The second floor was silent, the shadows stretching long and distorted in the dim light filtering through the stained glass. I checked each room, my breath catching in my throat. Nothing. No sign of forced entry, no furniture out of place. Just the dust motes dancing in the air and the unsettling feeling of being watched. The thumps continued, almost every night. Sometimes 1, sometimes 3, always at random intervals. They became my nightly lullaby, a constant reminder that I wasn't alone in the house. I started sleeping with the lights on, which did little to ease my anxiety but did wonders for my electricity bill. I tried to rationalize them. Old houses made noises, right? Pipes, squirrels, wind, but these thumps were different. They were too purposeful, too heavy. One afternoon, Mrs. Gable from the bakery stopped by with a plate of cookies, blueberry, my favorite. Small towns, I guess. She was a plump woman with a kind face and eyes that missed nothing. We sat on the porch, the swing creaking rhythmically as we talked about the weather, the upcoming harvest festival, and inevitably the house. Beautiful place, she said, her voice a little too bright. But it has a history. That house, I gathered, I said, trying to sound casual. Anything I should know? She hesitated, her gaze shifting to the overgrown garden. Just be careful, Liam. Some houses hold onto things that aren't always friendly. That night I did some digging. I found old newspaper articles online, faded and grainy, about the disappearance of a young woman named Emily Carter in 1978. She'd vanished without a trace, last seen walking home from the town library. The article mentioned that she lived just a few houses down from mine, and chillingly that the investigation had focused on the occupants of my house at the time. The case was never solved. The thump started again that night, louder and more insistent than ever. I couldn't sleep. I paced through the house, every shadow a potential threat, every creak of the floorboards sending shivers down my spine. I started to feel like I was losing it. The next day I saw him, old man Hemlock, the town recluse. He lived in a ramshackle cabin at the edge of the woods, and people whispered that he was a little touched. I found him tending his garden, his hands gnarled and covered in dirt. "Mr. Hemlock," I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "I'm Liam, I live in the old Carter house." He looked up, his eyes piercing and unnervingly bright. "Carter house," he croaked, his voice raspy. "Bad things happened there." "Bad things, I know." I said, "About Emily Carter. And the noises I've been hearing." He shook his head, his eyes filled with a deep sadness. "Some things are best left undisturbed, son. That house, it's a hungry place. Leave it be." "What kind of things?" I pressed. "What's causing those thumps?" He just stared at me, his silence more terrifying than any words. "Go," he finally said, his voice barely a whisper. "Get out of that house before it's too late." That night I set up security cameras. Cheap ones from the internet, but better than nothing. I positioned them in the living room, the hallway, and pointed at the front door. I lay in bed, watching the live feed on my laptop, every nerve on high alert. Nothing happened for hours. Just the empty rooms, the flickering shadows, the oppressive silence of the house. I was starting to think I was imagining things, that the stress was finally getting to me. Then at 3:17 a.m., the living room camera flickered. A brief burst of static, and then something moved. A dark shape just at the edge of the frame, too indistinct to make out, but undeniably there. And then the thump. Loud, resonating, like something heavy being dropped right in front of the camera. I froze, my blood turning to ice. I rewound the footage, playing it back in slow motion. The shape was there again, a fleeting glimpse of something, human-shaped, but distorted, twisted, like a nightmare made flesh. I called Sarah, my sister. She's a nurse, practical and grounded, the voice of reason I desperately needed. "Liam, you're scaring me," she said, her voice tight with worry. "Maybe you should come back to the city for a while, just to clear your head." "I can't, Sarah," I said, my voice shaking. "Something's happening here, something's not right. It's probably just the house settling," she said, but I could hear the doubt in her voice. "Or maybe you're just tired, stressed." "No," I said, "it's more than that. I saw something on the security camera, something unnatural." She sighed. "Send me the footage," she said. "I'll take a look." The next day, Sarah arrived. She watched the security footage, her face pale. "Okay," she said slowly. "That's weird." "Weird?" I exclaimed. "It's terrifying." She spent the day trying to debunk my theories. She checked the house for drafts, for loose floorboards, for anything that could explain the noises and the shadows. She found nothing. "Maybe it's just a prankster," she said, trying to sound optimistic. "Someone messing with you." But we both knew that wasn't true. That night, the thumps started earlier than usual. They were relentless, deafening, echoing through the house like a drumbeat of dread. The security cameras went haywire, flickering and cutting out. We huddled together in the living room, our nerves frayed. Then we heard a scratching sound coming from inside the walls. It was faint at first, but it grew louder and louder until it sounded like something was trying to claw its way out. Sarah grabbed my hand, her grip tight. "We need to get out of here," she said. But before we could move, the scratching stopped. The house went silent, too silent. And then, the thump, it was the loudest one yet, shaking the house to its foundations. It came from above us, from the attic. I hadn't been in the attic since I moved in. I'd peeked in, saw it was full of cobwebs and dust, and decided to leave it for another day. Now I knew I couldn't avoid it any longer. "I have to go up there," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Sarah tried to stop me, but I pushed past her. I grabbed the iron candlestick and started up the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest. The attic was dark and stifling, the air thick with dust and the smell of decay. The only light came from a small, grimy window at the far end of the room. I swept the candlestick in front of me, trying to pierce the gloom. The attic was filled with junk old furniture covered in sheets, stacks of yellowed newspapers, and boxes overflowing with forgotten memories. I moved slowly, my senses on high alert. Then I saw it, a door, hidden behind a stack of old trunks. It was small and unassuming, almost invisible in the dim light. I hadn't noticed it before. I hesitated for a moment, my hand trembling as I reached for the doorknob. I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the bone that whatever was causing the thumps was behind that door. I took a deep breath and opened it. The room was small and circular, with no windows and only one entrance. The walls were painted with strange symbols, symbols I didn't recognize, but that filled me with a deep sense of unease. In the center of the room there was a crude altar made of stone, and on the altar there were photographs of the missing people, Emily Carter, others whose names I recognized from the newspaper articles I'd found, all of them staring out with wide, terrified eyes. Then I heard a sound behind me, a shuffling, dragging sound. I turned around, my heart leaping into my throat. The door slammed shut, plunging the room into darkness. I fumbled for the candlestick, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. And then I felt it, a cold, clammy hand on my shoulder. I screamed, swinging the candlestick wildly. I felt it connect with something solid, and there was a guttural grunt of pain. But the hand didn't let go. It tightened its grip, its nails digging into my skin. I struggled, kicking and punching, but I couldn't break free. Something was holding me, something strong and unseen. The room filled with a low, guttural growl. It was coming from everywhere, from all around me. I felt a sharp pain in my back, like something was tearing at my flesh. I screamed again, a primal scream of terror. And then everything went black. I woke up on the floor of the attic, my head throbbing. The hidden room was gone, the door sealed shut. The attic was silent, too silent. I staggered to my feet, my body aching. I stumbled down the stairs, my mind reeling. Sarah was waiting for me in the living room, her face etched with worry. "Liam, what happened? Are you okay?" I don't know," I said, my voice hoarse. There was a room, a hidden room with pictures. I tried to explain what I'd seen, but the words came out jumbled and incoherent. Sarah looked at me with concern, her eyes filled with pity. "Liam," she said gently, "there's no hidden room. I checked. The attic is just full of junk." I knew she didn't believe me. She thought I was hallucinating, that the stress had finally pushed me over the edge. I called the police, but they didn't believe me either. Detective Miller came to the house, searched the attic, and found nothing. He dismissed my claims as a delusion, a product of my overactive imagination. "Mr. Walker," he said, his voice weary, "I think you need to get some rest and maybe see a therapist." They took me away in an ambulance strapped to a gurney. Sarah rode with me, holding my hand. "It's going to be okay, Liam," she said, her voice soft. "We'll get you help." I didn't say anything. I just stared out the window at the house receding into the distance. The house stands empty now, a silent sentinel on the edge of town. It's back on the market, waiting for its next victim. They say I had a breakdown, that I imagined everything. Maybe they're right. Maybe the house was just an old house, and the thumps were just the sounds of it settling. But sometimes, when I'm lying in bed at night, I hear a faint, muffled thump coming from under the floor. And I know with a certainty that chills me to the bone that whatever was in that house is still with me. It's not the house that's haunted, it's me. Thump.